There we go. All right, so last two classes, we've been talking about the psychoanalytic perspective on personality, the idea that our personality is influenced by unconscious factors, by things that happen to us in childhood that kind of come and affect us for the rest of our lives. And please get everybody's cameras on. I don't want to ask again. Shouldn't be hard. I shouldn't even have this. We're in freaking March. I shouldn't have to ask anymore. Okay. All right. So that theory looks at personality in terms of unconscious influences and whatnot. Following psychoanalytic, there's one that comes in between that we'll talk about next class. But in the 1950s, I believe, there is a theory put forth by this guy, Gordon Allport, called trait theory. Okay? Traits, he said, are stable and enduring behavior patterns. Okay? Basically, the underlying factors of how we normally act. Like on average, what is our personality like? Those are influenced by these different traits, which are for the most part, not entirely, but are for the most part genetic. So, what is different from this theory from other theories is that trait theory only looks to describe people. Okay? It only looks to say this person is shy, they are emotionally unstable, they are angry, all these things. Okay? It does not jump into why they are why they are like that, like Freudian theory does, where he says the Nearpod code is BRMI3. Why we got to be on time because okay, the Freudian theory and the other ones attempt to explain why we behave the way that we do. Okay, trait theory just says this is how this person, this is the overall personality picture of this person. The other thing that's unique about this theory is, while the other theories look to say how people are similar, this one looks to see how we differ from one another. Okay? All right, so trait theory says that our personality has different dimensions. Okay, and it kind of, we'll look and see what some of those dimensions are here in a little bit. But dimensions are like larger aspects of personality, such as how extroverted are you? And it says that basically the personality is a spectrum. Now, what does it mean that it's a spectrum? Huh? Oh, what does it mean that personality is a spectrum? Hello? Does anybody know what the word spectrum means? It's pretty diverse. Spectrum is a wide range, just like with autism spectrum disorder. There's no single autism. Schizophrenia, there's no single schizophrenia. Color is a spectrum. Okay? And if we say that this is a dimension right here, All right, this is a full dimension, and let's say that this dimension is extroversion. Okay, we all kind of fall in a different area there. And where we fall on it, wherever it is indicated by our different traits. They identify these traits by the use of factor analysis, something we've talked about before, right? By looking and seeing which different clusters of items correlate with one another. And saying like, all right, this one, and this one are all kind of answered the same way. So that would fall into this trait. Okay, factor analysis, looking at seeing how different factors are related to one another. Okay, all right, are there any questions there? So personality, the spectrum of personality started off with two different dimensions. All right, a guy named Hans Eysenck broke it down. Okay, he reduced personality down to two. I should keep meaning to change this, but I haven't. Down to two dimensions. Okay, those dimensions, he said, were extroversion and emotional stability. Where do we fall on the extroversion scale? Where do we fall on the emotional stability scale? Now, does anybody know extroversion and introversion are terms that are misinterpreted a lot? Anybody know what does it actually mean to be extroverted? Well, no, that's introverted. Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of times it is used synonymously with with people that are really outgoing. And that is true. Generally, people who are extroverted are also outgoing. But extroverted people get energy from being around other people, whereas introverted people get energy by being by themselves. Like introverted people have to just like decompress sometimes. It doesn't mean that introverted people aren't outgoing. They are sometimes. Okay. They just sometimes need to be like, all right, I'm done. I just need to be by myself. Yeah. So you're actually going to see, so this one, this scale right here, Eysenck's two dimensions, you could see where you would fall on this. Like I would kind of fall, most of us fall somewhere in the middle. Okay. I probably fall like right around in that. I lean a little bit more towards stable. But you're going to see where you fall on this dimension here in a few minutes when we take the big five, because these are two of the five dimensions on the big five. Okay. All right. So some biological components to traits. As we said, traits are oftentimes genetic. Not always, but they found some other biological differences between in the different dimensions of personality. They found that people that are extroverted have lower levels of brain arousal, meaning their brain is not as active. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not as smart. It means that they essentially have a higher optimal level of arousal, that their brain just doesn't create enough energy for them, and so they got to get it elsewhere. They got to get it from outside. Yeah. This is why people that are extroverts seek out stimulating activities, right? more prone for impulsivity, sometimes not as good decision makers. Whereas introverts show a thicker prefrontal cortex, right? Which means there's more processing, and introverts tend to be deeper thinkers and better planners. Gabriella says, sounds a lot like ADHD. Are they related? Extroversion? Yes, thank you. I meant to say that. Right. Extroversion, those brains are very similar. With ADHD, it's your brain doesn't produce enough stimulation, so you got to find it elsewhere. Okay. They also found that shy children have higher autonomic reactivity, meaning their sympathetic nervous system is more active, meaning they might feel more nervous faster or more strongly, which begs the question, all right, does shyness, does children being shy, does that cause them to be more nervous in social situations? Or do they just have a natural sympathetic reaction, which then causes, as a kind of defense mechanism, causes them to become shy because they realize that they have a sympathetic reaction being in a crowd? So it's kind of which came first, chicken or the egg. Okay. All right. Any questions there? So, how do we assess personality in the trait perspective? Psychoanalytic perspective, it's projective tests, the TAT and the Rorschach. Trait perspective is what are called personality inventories. An inventory is just a questionnaire. There's usually true-false questions or agree, disagree. All right, and they look and say, like, all right, using factor analysis, okay, they look to see which questions you answer which way, and those questions have been assigned a trait. Okay, so questions, measure certain traits. These tests are generally, at least when they are legit, they are what is called empirically derived. All right, empirically derived means that it is scientific and objective. The way that they do this is they give you a pool of questions, and then they see which questions discriminate between different groups. So they look and say, all right, because this is looking at differences in individuals, they look and say, all right, how do people with depression answer this question versus people who don't have depression? Okay, and by using that, by empirically deriving it, by looking at that correlation, it gives a scientific measure to it. Is Griffin in here? All right. So, any questions there? I know this definition is confusing. The question would ask, looking at a pool of things that discriminate between different groups. All right, some examples of personality inventories. The MMPI, very long test that, yeah, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory was initially used to assess emotional disorders. Now it's used for employment screening. So if any of you have had a job where you had to take like a really long test in your application, huh? Yep. Yeah. If you, and usually they do this at like big, like if it's like Harris Teeter or Walmart or whatnot, but it's like a really long test, and they ask you like the same questions over and over, but in different ways. Like, I believe stealing is wrong, and then they ask you like, I would take something if I knew nobody was watching, and they're looking to see if you answer it the same way each time. Okay, to see if you're like just trying to bullshit it. But if you've taken a test like that, that is likely the MMPI. Okay, that's what it's mostly used for now. Because they found that it was not particularly good at assessing emotional stability. They found that white people somehow just score 5 points above others on average. And they don't really know why, but I think it's 5 points specifically above black people on average. They don't really know why, but there's no difference there in like emotional stability between those populations. Another one that probably a lot of you all have taken before, the Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs online is also called 16 personalities. Okay, the Neo-Freudian test, looking at how we make decisions. The one that gives you all the 16 different personalities, like INTP. You know, it says, introvert, neurotic, thinking, perceiving, extrovert, feeling, justifying. That's what all those things mean. The problem with the Myers-Briggs is that it has low test-retest reliability. Does anybody know what that means? You broke up there, Dominique. Yeah, with reliability, it's when you take it multiple times, you get the same result. The Myers-Briggs only has 50% test-retest reliability, meaning if you take it twice within a 3-week period, you have a 50% chance of getting a different personality type the second time you take it than you did the first time. Okay, so these are ones that are empirically derived. There's some that are not. Like, well, I mean, I guess they could be, but there's all the BuzzFeed quizzes, like what type of cheese are you? Okay, those would all be considered personality inventories. What house of Harry Potter would you be in? Is a personality inventory. Okay, so really just know that the MMPI and the MBTI are examples of personality inventories. All right, the one that is, the one that is used most often now, okay, and the one that is considered to be the most valid and the most reliable is what is called the Big Five. Big Five factors or Big Five inventory. McCrae and Costa took Eysenck's 2 dimensions, extroversion and emotional stability, and added 3 more of them: conscientiousness, openness, and agreeableness. Now, you need to know what these are, and you need to know a basic descriptor of each one of these. because there is a good chance you will see one of these come up on an FRQ. Now, I'm going to go over them real quick, and then you're going to take the big five, and it's going to give you explanations of each one of them. Now, there are two different mnemonics to help you remember the order, or help you remember what they are. One of them that they have on here is canoe. Okay. The other one that I've used in the past is ocean. They both are the same. It's just different order of the words. All right. So conscientiousness. Conscientiousness, and they score you on these on a scale of 1 to 100. So that's what you're going to get when you take the big five. All right. People that are conscientious are very organized, are very neat. They think about other people. All right. That's what's included in it. People who score low in conscientiousness tend to be disorganized and careless. Agreeableness. People who are agreeable are nice, helpful. Again, it's really helpful when everyone is on time to class so that I don't have to keep putting in the Nearpod code. Well, Grayson, you are supposed to be at school today. All right. What did you say? You had a headache? So if somebody goes better, you stay home? Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right. Neuroticism. Okay. Neuroticism is how emotionally stable we are. All right. Low on the neuroticism scale, being neurotic is like being anxious. Okay. Low on it, you're more calm. High on it, you're more anxious. And then again, in the middle, there are all these different traits. Openness is openness to new experiences. People are high on it, more imaginative, they're more independent, they like variety, they're free thinkers, more creative, they like to do exciting things. People who are low on it might be just this is how you do something. Okay. They're direction followers. They prefer routine. They fall into line. Might be perfectly happy just staying in Ballantyne for the rest of their lives. Okay. Just never doing anything other than just go to Blakeney. All right. And then finally, extroversion. Okay. People who are high on the extroversion are sociable, outgoing, fun loving. People who are low might be very reserved, quiet. Okay. They don't like to be around other people. Okay. So on the next slide, I'm going to have a link for to take you to the Big 12 or Big 10, Big 5. I just had to go through a couple conferences first. And what I want for you to do is the test will take you probably about 3 minutes to do. It's only about 30 questions. It's like agree, disagree. Okay. What I want for you to do, and I'm going to share my screen with you, is when you are done taking it, it is going to give you results that look like this. Okay. You're going to have your overall results, how you compare to the national average, and then if you scroll down, it's going to tell you more about each one. And it's going to say like high, moderate, or low. Okay, what I want you to do is when you're scrolling down through these, I want you to write down for each characteristic, for each dimension, are you high, moderate, or low? Okay, just write down for each one, high, moderate, or low, because we're going to put it into a poll so that you all can see how you match up compared to the rest of your classmates. Okay, make sure you write it down, because once I change slides, well, you can open up this you can open it up in a new window, but if you don't, once I change slides to go to the poll, then the window's going to close. Okay, so make sure you write down. Just put like O, H, high, whatever. All right, so there you go. There is the link. Go ahead and take the Big Five. All right, is everybody about done? And has written down how they score on each one, where they fall, so that we can compare it. Okay, well, hurry up. This really shouldn't take all that long. Okay. All right. If you go back to this website, it actually saves your results on there. It's just if you type in 538 big five, like the first thing will be the web page. All right, so for openness to experience, all right, where do you all score on that? Okay, let's make sure that we are answering. Okay. All right, so about 50% high openness to experience. All right, that's where I score as well. Agreeableness. Why are there only 27 people in the Nearpod? Like, how are some people? I guess some people just aren't even paying. All right, whatever. You all do what you want. Okay. All right, agreeableness. Where do you score on that? One person who is low agreeableness. So, all right, there we go. So about 45% moderate agreeableness. So not the easiest class to get along with, but I score high, but not crazy high. I don't think on this one. I think the range is like 65 to 100 is high. All right, conscientiousness. All right, wow, quite a bit of low conscientiousness. All right, low levels of organization. That's what that really means. All right, so there you go. All right, negative emotionality or neuroticism. And this one, low is calm. Okay. All right. Wow. This one is basically kind of split relatively evenly. All right. And then finally, extroversion. Okay, and wow, this one is basically split pretty evenly. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so how do you all feel that like thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you think that the Big Five is relatively accurate in assessing your personality? Yeah. How about just like on average, relatively accurate? Like we all know that we go and like sometimes we're here, sometimes we're here, but on average, what they have found, Big Five is by far the most accurate. All right. Criticism. Criticisms, major weaknesses. Uh, the fact that it's self-report inventories, meaning it's people reporting on themselves. Why is this problematic sometimes? Okay, we have sometimes have a skewed. Okay, yeah, on ourselves. Yeah, a lot of times, a lot of times we lie as well. All right, and then also what is called the person situation controversy, which just looks at the trait theory doesn't take situation into account. And as we know, our behaviors and our personality can change situation to situation. Maybe not a whole lot, but it certainly does. And that's what the next theory that we're going to talk about. That is what that goes on. All right. We're almost done, guys. There'll be probably about 10 more minutes or so because the next theory is super straightforward. All right. So, are there any questions on trait theory? All right. Now, after trait theory comes about what is called the social cognitive perspective. As we understand about personality and things in general, it is very, very complex. Okay? Behavior is more complicated, and it's too complicated to just narrow it down to individual traits. To just say this person has these traits, right? We got to take a lot of other factors into account, which is where, and just in terms of behavior in general, it's where the social cognitive perspective comes in. Social cognitive perspective is fathered by Albert Bandura. Anybody remember where we have heard of Bandura before? Yep. Next, the Bobo doll. All right, Bobo doll experiment. Not Bodo, Bobo. Okay, looking at observational learning. Okay, observational learning and modeling, which falls into the social cognitive perspective. Basically, Bandura says that personality and behavior influenced by an interaction between nature and it's a combination of the effects of learning or conditioning, thinking, and then our environment, and how these three factors interact with one another. This theory is the most complete regarding personality. All right, so there's really just one term that you need to know what social cognitive is: interaction between environment and thinking. Okay, environment is social, behavior is social, cognitive is thinking. All right, but the term that goes along with this that sort of describes how this affects personality is what is called reciprocal determinism. Now, this is a term that sounds like it's really difficult. It's really not. Does anybody know what does reciprocal mean? Um, it could mean the opposite, kind of. It kind of goes into it, but if I like reciprocate something, what does that mean? Replicate, kind of. Anybody else? Agree with it? Okay. Now, if I reciprocate a favor, then I'm doing like a favor in return. Okay. Somebody does something for you, you reciprocate, you do something in return. Reciprocate is like a means that it is like a give and take. And this basically says that our personality is determined by a give and take between behavioral factors like our conditioning, cognitive factors like our thinking, and environmental factors like our social environment and whatnot, our religion, all of these different things. Okay, and that all of these three factors all give and take back and forth from one another. Right? The environment that we are in influences how we behave. Okay, and then how we behave influences how we think, and so on and so forth. If you're in a classroom and you know you need to behave, behaving well might actually make you a better student and make you pay attention more, right? And then because you're paying attention more and you're answering questions, it's making that a better environment, and so on and so forth. Okay, so reciprocal determinism looks at how these three factors all interact to create our full picture of personality. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, because we know, do you all act the same in do you all act different in different classes that you are in? Maybe not on Zoom, but like in general, yeah. Yeah, like some classes you're probably more talkative than other classes because of different, maybe some class you're intimidated by the teacher versus you're not, or you have friends in it, or you're interested in it or whatnot, and changes overall might not change your personality a whole lot, but it changes it a little bit. So, a couple of the factors that go into this. All right, different people choose different environments. A lot of the environment that we choose is based on our competencies, meaning like what we're good at. So, if you choose to go into theater versus sports, and you choose those things, or yeah, and you choose what TV shows you watch, what movies you watch, what music you listen to. You choose your friends. You choose you choose to take an AP class. Or maybe you're choosing it because you want to be challenged, or because you want the extra GPA credit or whatnot. So we choose environments, and then after we choose an environment, that environment shapes us as well. So if you think about it, if you think about the different athletes at Ardrey Kell, okay, is there a difference between volleyball players and soccer players? Like personality-wise? Or the difference between baseball players and lacrosse players? Personality. Anybody? Okay. I would venture to say that there is. That there is a different, they kind of just personality-wise, like those teams are all very different. Right? But is it because certain people choose that environment, or is it because once people choose to be on a certain team, their personalities are then shaped by that team? Like I can say that, like I can look, I can look at a lineup of guys, and I could point out and just say these guys right here are baseball players. All right, I can pick out baseball players basically the second I see them because they just have a vibe. Okay, so they chose that environment, and then that environment affects them as well. Our personalities shape how we interact, how we interpret and react to situations. Has anybody ever dated anybody who overthought everything and always saw little things as like a possible threat to the relationship, or they were worried all the time about every little thing? They misinterpreted texts and all those different and everything like that. Anybody ever dated anybody like that before? It ended horribly. Yeah. Okay. So, right, they found that anxious people in relationships are more attuned to threats. And because of that, they may create more threats in their mind. And then what happens in relationships like that when somebody is constantly worried, I think you're going to break up with me, or you doing this, or what ends up happening? But yeah, eventually the other person just gets tired of it. Right? And so their reaction to the situation then causes a whole different situation. Whether there was an issue or not, okay, they've caused a whole different situation. And that's the last thing with this. Our personalities help create situations to which we react. Okay? A person who's worried all the time that their boyfriend or girlfriend is going to leave them, eventually that person's going to get tired of it and is probably going to try to break up with them. All right? Or has anybody ever been in a class where the whole class just kind of does stuff to just poke at the teacher? Okay? What generally ends up happening in classes where the class just does stuff to poke at the teacher all the time? Does the teacher usually get the class in order? No. Okay? Class pokes at the teacher. Teacher gets mad. What happens generally in those types of classes when the teacher gets mad? All right. Well, how does the class usually react to it when the teacher gets mad? Do they give in? They laugh and they make it, and it generally gets worse. And so it just escalates and escalates and escalates. Okay, so we create situations in which to which we react. Okay. Are there any questions there about reciprocal determinism? Just the idea of our behavior, our personality is a product of our environment, our thinking, and our behavior and how we have learned. Okay. All right, so got a couple examples on there. All right, don't need to worry about that. All right, last slide. Okay, evaluating the social cognitive perspective. So the criticism of this one is the opposite of the criticism of trait theory. That there's too much emphasis on the situation, not enough on underlying traits. Now we're going to come back to this idea of situational influence when we get to social psychology. because the situation that we are in does play a massive role in how we behave. Okay, and that's why this theory is probably the most complete. But we'll look at it in terms of the Stanford Prison Experiment, which is very much looking at how situation creates behavior.